3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, granitegrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from granitegrok.com.
Grok Talk.
All right, we are Grok Talk. We are having technical difficulties. Hey, you should donate to us so we can buy better equipment. That's right. Welcome back to Grok Talk, brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and granitegrok.com. And Skip's trying to get our guest on the phone. We might be having issues with equipment on our end. I wouldn't doubt it. I did have to have my laptop fixed this week so that we could have music and segment breaks and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And that's just what happens, you know, things wear out or break down. And we apologize to our guest if it is us, and until we are able to get him on the phone, it's Dr. Jason Fodeman, MD. Line 1. Switching to line 1. Switch to line 1.
Excellent.
And don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We're on YouTube. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on Spreaker. We're on iHeartRadio and TuneIn. And we'd really appreciate it if you would come check us out. You ready? All right, fantastic. We managed to survive this process. We'd like to welcome Dr. Jason Fodeman, MD, an assistant professor of medicine at the University of Arizona and a board-certified internal medical doctor. He's contributed to heritage.org, specializing in healthcare policy. And he joins us today to talk about some of the aspects of Obamacare that you might not be familiar with. Dr. Fodeman, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Steve. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm glad to have you on. We haven't talked about Obamacare in a little while, and it's out there, and it's affecting our lives, and we really need to have a discussion. You recently wrote an article for The Hill in which you contended that Obamacare undermines the ability of doctors to treat patients. As a medical doctor, you clearly have some experience with this. Why don't you tell us about that?
Sure. And it's a really important issue, and, especially as some of the provisions of this law kicked in, and, this is definitely something that the public kind of needs to hear about, and, really appreciate you giving me the issue the attention. So I had an article recently in The Hill, published last week, basically talking about the care that the president recently received versus for his sore throat. There was a press release out in December about how he had a sore throat and how he had a very thorough evaluation with an ENT consult, a CAT scan, what appears to be some sort of endoscopic procedure. And to contrast with the ethos of Obamacare, it's very different. Now, surely the president, the leader of the free world, deserves top-notch medical care, but as a medical doctor, I strive to give that high degree of care to anybody who walks through the door. And as the ACA rolls out, I think there's some provisions in there that are going to limit that. Now, one of which is the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. And what that is mandated to do, as established by the law, is to conduct comparative effectiveness research, comparing the efficacies of various surgical, various medical, therapeutic treatments, interventions, diagnoses. And now some may say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound so bad. And perhaps per se it isn't, but when it's funded by the federal government, which it is, and by a federal government that's looking to control costs, as a practicing physician, there's definitely concerns on my part as to how that research might be used down the road. For example, used by the federal government to perhaps cut reimbursements for quote-unquote less effective treatments, or it could be used by Medicare or Medicaid to frankly just not cover quote-unquote less effective treatments, or perhaps other interventions that would make it harder for patients to get this type of care or for doctors to prescribe it. And now, so the main issue here with quote-unquote less effective treatment is, while a study may show one thing, that for 10,000 or 100,000 or for 1 million patients that something is less effective, but the problem is that that's the average patient. But what about the patient that walks into the exam room, the actual patient that's talking, looking at you, the one that as a physician you're examining? And there's a huge difference between the average patient and the individual patient. And unfortunately, this part of the ACA, the Corey, misses that. And not only do patients respond differently to different meds, to different treatments, and when that's the case, you do something else. If one med doesn't work, you try something else. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it is that patients, they have different wants, they have different desires, they have different life experiences, cultural beliefs, and that's all well and good. But unfortunately, for something like this, that can kind of prevent patients perhaps from getting what they want. So that's just one aspect of the law to me as a physician is concerning.
I can speak from some experience. I have ulcerative colitis, and my gastroenterologist, great guy. We go in, we take surveys, we give information for a database to help treat patients. But there's such a wide range of treatments for this particular condition. I take prescription medication, and it completely eliminates all the issues I might have. Other people, that's certainly not the case. And if the government was going to intervene and say, well, you can only give them this procedure or this process or this prescription, it might be totally inappropriate to their circumstances.
Sure, you're absolutely right, and I definitely appreciate the personal example as well, that patients just have, there's just so many different, complexities and vagaries of the human body and so many different presentations of different illnesses that, again, for the average patient, it might be great, but the patient actually in the exam room might have a slightly different presentation and thus warrant different treatment, or they might want a different treatment, or they might fail the conventional treatment and need something else. And it's just that this type of broad guidelines at, the federal level, it's just impossible to craft for such an array of patients. And it's just, it's just really contradictory kind of to the ethos of healthcare, to the ethos of individualized medicine, where you try to work, patient-centered care, where you work with your patient to try to get them the care that they need, get them the care that they want, and really try to empower your patient to make the medical decision and be involved in that process, which, fosters better outcomes, fosters better compliance. And this is, could potentially take things in a very, very different direction where doctors' hands are tied and the patient's hands are tied.
This is Skip, and I want to say thanks for coming on the show. And you're absolutely right. I think at some point, most health professionals are going to become reduced to being just a clerk. Here's your standard operating procedures. Thou shalt not vary from them. And this is what you will do regardless of whether it's the right thing to do, because it's all about the money. It's all about the cost. And then, of course, it's all about giving us all the data so we can then just change the procedures later on that we know best for you, the progressive mantra. We will tell you what to do because we know better than you, because we're the smart people, regardless of the fact that folks like you who have spent years in school and in practice really are smarter about this than them. But it's government, period.
Sure. No, it's this mantra that they know best, and of course they'll find some way to opt themselves out of the same regulations and the same Obamacare and this and that. But and there's a lot of different issues here. I mean, you're talking about medicine and it being an art, and it being a really kind of unique opportunity to connect and interact with your patients and make a difference. And then there's a lot of unintended consequences here, because when you lose that benefit of practicing medicine and being a physician and being able to make medical diagnoses and medical treatments and work with your patient and help your patient, when you lose that main benefit, which unfortunately has been diminished over the past 50, 60 years with Medicare and the rise of third-party payers, although in my opinion Obamacare is just going to kind of throw it off the cliff. But when you lose that, well, then you see a young person like myself, maybe a few years younger, looking at kind of different career options and looking at different career paths and trajectories. And you really have to wonder if medical school and doing the investment and time, 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency, another more fellowship, if you're just going to be kind of a clerk or doing what the government tells you, if it's really worth it. And what's very likely to happen is that the best and brightest who now do go into medicine are probably going to choose something else. And while that may be okay for them and, you know, they'll all do fine, it's going to be the patient suffering the limited access, the long waits, and just getting substandard care.
Well, haven't we already seen this in Britain with the NHS, where certainly lots of British doctors, you know, very fine, upstanding doctors in their fields, have been oftentimes replaced by doctors from afar that aren't quite at the same level of or standards, and they've been given these jobs or recruited because they are of lesser cost. So we see this downward spiral, and you know, I think all of us are familiar with some of the horror stories that have come out of the UK based on what they see in what's going on here. We hear all these stories, and yes, there are cases where things are good, but Mike, you probably have some stories. Mike is a transplant from Britain.
Yeah, it doesn't work that well. It works like unionized teaching in our schools, frankly, which is any time the government, which basically owns the system, attempts to exact any kind of efficiency or cost savings, they all go on strike and hurt the customer. You can't make this stuff up. It is not run for the benefit of the customer because they aren't customers. They're just hamsters, I guess, guinea pigs. The government's paying for the whole thing, and there's no concept of relationship and accountability between the medical staff and the patients until something goes so horribly wrong that it makes the major newspapers.
Sure. And this is really kind of the exact opposite direction, in my opinion. And again, they never asked me, unfortunately, but it's really, as a doctor, it's really the exact opposite opinion we need, exact opposite way we need to go in. I mean, in medicine right now, there's already too much red tape. There's already too much regulation, too much government interference, too much third-party administrator role. And in my opinion, that's really why we're where we are right now, with rising health, with costs exploding and a lot of uninsured. And I do believe that we do need to intervene to solve those problems, because healthcare costs that, currently cost, 49 million uninsured, and, healthcare costs are exploding. I mean, both of those are not sustainable, but this isn't the solution, Obamacare. This is taking the problem and pouring oil on the fire. This isn't going to lower costs. If it bends the cost curve, it's going to bend it up. And even when all is said and done, according to the government's own estimates, there's still going to be 31 million Americans in this country without health insurance. So we're not solving any of the problems here. We're just taking a largely successful system, turning it on its head, taking those who liked their plan, liked their doctor, had a plan, liked it, had a doctor, liked it, and basically just kind of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I think the direction we should have gone in, the direction that I hope those in Washington, those in state capitals will consider going in, is trying to find solutions to give patients a little more skin in the game, to give patients the resources and the knowledge and also the incentive to be a little smarter consumers, to try to, think, do I really need this test? How much does this cost? That's the type of solutions we need, such as expanding health savings accounts to try to get people to use healthcare dollars a little more wisely, to making insurance portable, to making a real national market for insurance where if I'm in Arizona, but I see a plan that's cheaper in Nebraska and has everything I want, that I can go out and buy that plan. We need tort reform to protect physicians from ordering some of the unnecessary tests that we have to do just for literally defensive medicine because we're scared we're going to get sued. That's the type of direction that we need to go in, and that's the type of direction that I think is going to lower costs and also make sure that patients get the care that they need and they want. Because first off, history dictates, what has government gotten involved with and, gets better. It's not the post office, it's not the airlines, it's not Amtrak. They don't have much of a track record here, not the VA, healthcare. So that's one aspect. But and then B, healthcare is just so complex that it's impossible to draw a line in the sand for everybody. And that's the only way that this law ultimately will be able to cull costs. That's not how it was sold to the American people. That's not how it was passed, or I guess rammed through Congress might be a better word. But that's really the only way that this law is going to control costs, and that drawing that line in the sand is going to prevent patients from getting the care that they need and want, and prevent doctors, really hamstring them from doing their job and practicing patient-centered medicine.
All right, Dr. Fodeman, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, hopefully we can talk about value-based payment modifiers and IPAB, which is a pretty popular acronym that people are afraid of. We'll talk about that in about 60 seconds. We'll be right back. Stay on the line.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Rock Talk.
All right, this is Grok Talk. We are on the phone with Dr. Jason Fodeman, MD, who is out in Arizona. And are you actually in Arizona right now?
I actually in Arizona.
So,
I'm in Tucson.
Okay, great. It's a little warmer out there than it is here, I think.
Yeah, that's probably a safe assumption. Although it does actually get cold in the desert in the winter. We actually had snow 2 weeks ago, but still probably a little warmer than New Hampshire, I would imagine.
And you've got some altitude out there, so you get snow, at the higher elevation. So that's but it's not, it's. I get up this morning to take the dogs out. It's 5. That's probably a little bit colder than you would get. But we wanted to move on. And actually, did you have a question, Max? Because I have a state rep here in my studio, and he had a question he wanted to ask.
I sponsored a bill, or I sponsored an amendment to a bill, HB 128, which lifted the cap of 100 employees. But the bill's intent was to allow people in New Hampshire to buy medical insurance and businesses to buy medical insurance from out of state, Maine network, Massachusetts network, Vermont, or some other state. Isn't it true that if a business is contractually obligated by the union contract or employee contract to continue to provide health care from a Massachusetts network, that existing law makes it illegal then for that company to move up to New Hampshire and create jobs here?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and all the regulations and the lack of the laws that prevent portability, it definitely has an impact on affecting how companies act, affecting how individuals act, affecting how businesses, corporations act, where they work, who they hire, jobs, moves that they make. And it makes no sense. I mean, there's no reason why when I moved from California to Arizona because of healthcare, different mandates and regulations, that I have to lose my insurance. If I have a plan that I like in California, why can't, with all my furniture and my car and my pictures and my cookingware, why can't I bring my health insurance with me as well? And it seems like these are the type of common sense solutions that we need to employ to try to give patients more skin in the game and lower healthcare costs. We don't need a 2,900-page law to solve these problems. We don't need a billion-dollar website that doesn't even work. We don't need a team of navigators, consultants. We just really need a few common sense solutions that really get to the root of the problem and also create a lot of unintended consequences. You're absolutely right, Max. Like, inhibiting job growth, hurting the economy. Those are the type of things we need, and we don't need this. This isn't the solution. This is the problem, unfortunately, the ACA.
So we have about 5 minutes left. Two more things that you covered in your article were value-based payment modifiers and, of course, the Independent Advisory Board. Which would you prefer to tackle? Just go for it.
Ben, they're both very, concerning parts of this law, and, so sorry, it's a, 2,900-page law to get into 30 minutes, but I'm doing my best here. But, so the value-based payment modifier, that's something that hasn't really gotten a lot of attention, but I think it's something that the American public definitely needs to know about, and it can definitely have some very similar consequences to Victoria as well, as far as preventing patients from getting the care that they want. Basically, what the value-based payment modifier does is it ties reimbursement to quality and to cost. And now, on the face, this might be, that makes sense. Higher quality physicians should be paid better. Of course, the catch is, how do you define quality? And that's going to be defined by the Secretary of HHS. But what's really concerning is this kind of tying reimbursement to cost, where basically you're going to establish an arbitrary threshold for acceptable costs, and then once you get to that threshold, once you pass that threshold, you're going to start to be penalized in the form of Medicare reimbursement. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to create kind of a perverse incentive where physicians nearing this threshold, which may be accurate, it may be not, could be penalized, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on them. Probably not so much from them, because for me, my object is always the patient. But what we're happening with this law as well is we're seeing consolidation, where clinics are getting bought out by bigger clinics. Bigger clinics are getting bought out by hospitals. Hospitals are getting bought out by large health networks, and health networks are getting bought out by bigger corporations. And I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on the physicians from administrators in these type of entities, and we're seeing more and more of our healthcare resources going to administrators and to big healthcare conglomerates, the away from direct patient care. But I think that could put this perverse incentive and pressure on physicians to kind of not order the tests, the consults, the medicine that their patients may need as they get into kind of closer and closer to this threshold. And I think it could have kind of a very similar effect as the Corey to preventing patients from getting, the care that they need and want, and again, getting the care, not being able to get the care that President Obama has gotten. And again, he deserves top-notch medical care, but every patient does, and that's going to be harder to do under the ACA for physicians like myself.
Is there, we're running down on a time here, now you're, assistant professor of medicine at University of Arizona. You've got a ton of content over at heritage.org. I was over there the other day reading some of your stuff. You've been contributing there for a long time. Hang on, I got to quote. Which states allow you to buy out-of-state insurance? Do you know that off the top of your head?
As far as I know, I don't think any can, because it's it's a federal law. So as far as I know, there's not one where you buy out-of-state insurance.
Well, we're going to try to get New Hampshire to be one. We have a bill in the Senate and in the House. We've been doing this every year, trying to get this passed. Hopefully, it'll be this year. I doubt it, but maybe we're going to try. We want to lead the nation and set the standard. And you've brought a lot of concerns to us, and we appreciate that. If people wanted to reach you or read you, where would they go?
Sure. My email is jfodeman@email.arizona.edu. Would love to, hear kind of, feedback that, patients are having, doctors are having, and the article that I talked about was on the Hill, and then kind of, like you said, I've done some stuff for Heritage, the Galen Institute in D.C., and try to learn a lot when I can.
Well, thank you very much for taking time to talk to us this morning.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to be here, Steve.
All right, you have a great weekend.
Well.
Bye-bye. All right, that was Dr. Jason Fodeman. Jason Fodeman, M.D. He's an expert on this kind of issue that we're talking about. You should go to Heritage, look for his name, Fodeman. He's written tons of stuff. It's great. This is Grok Talk. We are going to our break. We'll be right back with Ed Nail, who's going to talk to us about vote fraud. And after that, Ken Eyring is in the room. We're going to visit Wyndham and talk about the school board and all kinds of fun stuff that's going on over there. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
We are struggling. Rising healthcare costs are part of the problem. Senator Jeanne Shaheen helped create this mess we're in. As a state senator, her bill chased 21 insurers out of our state. It reduced our choices, raised prices for New Hampshire families, and when Jeanne Shaheen supported Obamacare, it limited access to 10 of our 26 hospitals, reducing our choices again. Tell Jeanne Shaheen she's made healthcare worse. Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it. Call Ann Custer. Tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.